Well, hello again. Welcome back to the Alan Hudson podcast. Thanks very much for joining us again. As you can see, we've got another terrific guest lined up today. It's Nigel Martyn. We'll say hello to Nigel in a minute. But first things first, please remember to like, follow and subscribe to the podcast. And if you've got any questions for Alan, pop them in the comments section and we'll get Alan to reply to your queries. So on to today's show. As I say, Nigel Martyn, ex Everton, ex Leeds, ex Crystal Palace, and a winner of 23 England caps, I think, Nigel.
Yeah, it's quite a proud thing to have. Yeah, I'm very proud of that. It's down to hard work, I guess.
And of course, we're recording this show just hours after England's win over Mexico, so we've got to kick off with that. What are your thoughts about the game?
I thought we were immense. That was a big performance. Tough place to go. At 2-0, I thought that was quite good. Sort of said, right, we need to get to half time. Obviously, a very soft free kick gets given and we concede one and it's going to be difficult. But to go 3-1 up and then, to get a player sent off and then 3-2 and, to hold on under that amount of pressure. I thought the substitutions were brilliant. The defence was brilliant. The goalkeeper was excellent. And that's probably as good an all-round performance from everybody as we've seen in a few years.
I mean, you went to, I think, 4 major tournaments with England in your time. Any games that you can remember that you were involved in that relate to the Mexico win?
Backs to the wall like that. I mean, it felt like it, Argentina, when Beckham got sent off, but obviously we didn't get the result at the end of the day. And, when certain things go against you, it does bring the resilience level up that little bit more. And I know you're really keen in those moments to make sure you go through. So it was disappointing for us, in that sort of scenario, but the guys last night were incredible, and they should be very proud of their performance.
Alan, what are your thoughts on the game?
Well, I only see the second half because I was otherwise engaged, and I kind of turned the telly on to that when the second half was started. I'd never ever miss a game, but I did last night, and I was half like that because I'm not really an England fan. Mine said what you've just said is from the heart as well as the head. I'm not like that, but what I did see in the second half, I agree with every word you say, and I believe the only thing I can say is that I was bitterly disappointed with the opposition. If that was the best they could throw at us, and what did me more than anything, as he was making substitutions and he was bringing like John Stones on and the big fella from Newcastle, the 6'8" boy, they continued to cross it. And I thought, is this Mexican manager watching the game?
Yeah,
I think you got to try. That is, and don't get me wrong, there's been quite a few teams in this competition, and we see it like in the Premier League. Even Man City sometimes get to that where they just cross it, they run out of ideas, But I was very disappointed. I expected more from Mexico, but however they have played, you, as I say, you only do what you can against the opposition you play, and it'd have been interesting if he hadn't sent him off, how the game would have panned out. But if they could only play that well against 10, I know sometimes it can be difficult, but they when you've got 6-7 defenders like England that have lined across in front of you would know more than me, mine. It's a tough nut to crack,
It is. I mean, I think where we did well was we made sure that their spare man was always the wide man, and we were able to deal with crosses coming in. Like you said, we had some big guys back there to deal with that. I think if you're Mexico, you've got to try and get some 1-2s going, in a wide area. Try and get somebody in behind to slide balls across. where players can make runs. I think in the end, like you said, they ran out of ideas and were just kept pumping it in, and it was either a Dan Burn or John Stones or Mark Gay on the end of it, or even Jordan came and punched quite a lot and took the pressure off as well. So that played into our hands with just throwing it in there. That I think if they'd have tried to play it a little bit more cute, if you like, we could have been in a little bit more trouble. But we managed to hold on, and that was the important thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of teams play with 10 men, but not many as comfortable as that. It was. In fact, it probably suited England because they didn't have to run about so much. They could just sit there and when they got it, they were just hacking it, weren't they? But anyway, let's go on to Nigel, can we, Tony? I know you like England and Chelsea, but this is one of my clubs, Palace. I love Palace.
Yeah, good side, good team.
Yeah. Well, they're a great club, aren't they? They're great. I mean, what I love about them as well, I love the, supporters. There's a lot of supporters throughout the country. They moan and they groan, and Palace fans get on with it, don't they? And their crowds are always great, and they get behind their team and
yeah, absolutely. I'm
You've
pleased for them, winning competitions now. They've won an FA Cup, they've won a cup in Europe, and that's what the supporters deserve. We've been close on a lot of occasions, so it's nice, to actually win some trophies there. I'm really pleased for the supporters because there's that close knit between the with the players and the supporters there, and finally to get some proper silverware was good to see.
And they've had some players go through their hands, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I spoke to Jerry Francis about that, and obviously, Jerry was there briefly, and he was sort of saying that they've had some great players, through the before my time, but during my time with Wrighty and Brighty and Jeff Thomas and John Solako, and there were some great footballers there, that went on to do great things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us a bit about how your move to Crystal Palace came about, because obviously you were at Bristol Rovers. You're a Cornishman. What happened? How did you get to Palace in the first place?
Well, my journey is a bit of a strange one, actually. So actually getting from Cornwall to Bristol Rovers is probably more the story. So I was recommended by a guy that owned a carpet shop in St Blasey in Cornwall, recommended me to the tea lady at Bristol Rovers training ground. She went in to see Jerry Francis. Jerry said, get him up. We'll have him for a couple of days trial and then send him back. Had me up for a couple of days. I played half a game on the Saturday. And Jerry asked me how much I was earning. I told him that I was earning 95 quid a week, and he offered me 10 quid a week more. And that's how I became a professional footballer. 2 and a bit years later, having just missed out on getting promotion with Bristol Rovers to Division 2, the sort of Championship now. We just missed out on that, and then start the next season we were top of the league and going well again, and then Palace came in, and Jerry was very astute and said, we're not going to sell him for anything less than £1 million. So eventually, Steve Coppell and Crystal Palace paid the £1 million, and that's how I became the first £1 million goalkeeper.
So the tea lady clearly saw your career and her leaves, didn't she? Sorry, I couldn't resist that.
She must have done.
But what age were you when you made the move from Bristol Rovers to Palace?
I'd have been just 20. I was 23. I didn't come in till 20. I was just turning 21. So we had a week of. My wife turned 18. I turned 21. Made my Football League debut, and got married all in a week at Bristol Rovers. And we had to move the wedding day forward. From the 22nd of August to the 17th, which was a Monday, because we were playing at Sunderland on the 22nd. So it all happened very, very quickly.
And give us I mean, I think you probably did that earlier, but remind us who the players at Palace were at the time.
Well, it was Ian Wright, Mark Bright, Jeff Thomas, John Salako. I mean, when I first moved, it was before Andy Thorne and Eric Young came. They sort of came and solidified the centre half. It was Jeff Hopkins, Gary O'Reilly were centre halves at the time. In fact, I think Andy Thorne was bought just about the same time as I was. So Thorney went straight in. Eddie McGoldrick on the right. Alan Pardew was playing. So there were some really good footballers there that Steve had put together. He's very astute, Steve. He could spot a player and know how they would, add to his team. And I think after shipping 9 against Liverpool, I think he realised he needed a centre half and a goalkeeper. Although poor Perry Sutherland gets the blame for the 9 goals, but if you ever watch the video, he's not at fault for any of them. So it's just one of those things, a goalkeeper's lot, I guess.
Am I right in thinking that you got your own back on Liverpool by beating them in the FA Cup semi-final in 1990?
Yeah, same season. Yeah, so they would have been very confident about going through in that game. But I mean, it was one of those classic semi-finals. Steve Coppell said he wanted to keep it as tight as possible for the first half because Liverpool was such a great side. He wanted it to be 0-0. Obviously, we were 1-0 down, but it wasn't the end of the world. What he said was he wanted to play Liverpool over 45 minutes, not over 90. So keep that first half very, very tight, and then play them over 45 minutes, which obviously turned into extra time. But we managed to get the win and to beat them. They were the top team of the day. To beat them, having had them beat you 9-0 in the same season is a good turnaround, I think.
I mean, that was one of the great semi-finals. They talk about the great finals. That was one of the greatest semi-finals of all time, wasn't it? It's incredible.
It was. The whole atmosphere, the red and blue balloons going everywhere. It was proper old school sort of, the FA Cup semi-finals and finals that I used to watch as a kid. It had so much more about it. There wasn't so much football on the telly at that time. So I think when you're treated to something really special like that, it really stands out. But I think there's so much football on the TV now. We're flooded with it probably just about every single day of the week that, even when you get a good game, you talk about a good game, but it's not as special because you're seeing so many.
I bet there were big celebrations after that game, having been on the wrong end of a 9-0 hiding earlier in the season.
Yeah, I think the chairman ended up going into the bath at Villa Park. He got thrown in the bath with his suit on. I mean, South London lads like to celebrate and give it large, and those guys were certainly doing that. It was a very happy bus, shall we say, going back south, getting back to South London, and then I think the lads sort of carried it on a little bit afterwards as well.
The Cornish men not celebrating the same way then?
Yeah. I guess I'm a little bit quieter. I wasn't, as loud as Righty or whatever, or Brighty. They were the sort of main lads at the time, and they would celebrate at full volume. I was a little bit more low key.
Tell us a bit about the final. Obviously, you played United, and it went to a replay, didn't it? If I recall.
Yeah, I think everybody probably in the ground wished that the whichever way, if it had to go to penalties, just to get the thing done on the day would have been what everyone wanted. But obviously, it was a replay. The original game was 3-3. It was another sort of classic. I think we were leading 3-2 with 7 or 8 minutes to go, and Mark Hughes gets an equaliser. And then the replay itself was such a letdown because I think 2 teams were spent at the end of the season, and it was a bit of a dull affair, and probably only right that a left back goes and scores the only goal of the game, and we, unfortunately lose that 1-0, and that was disappointing. I think I'd rather have lost on penalties on the day. At least it would have been done, and the whole occasion would have been complete, rather than sort of trying to do it again a few days later.
Yeah, I was actually at the replay, and it was one that you thought about the long walk down Wembley Way, and back home and everything else. It was hurry up, what is it? You know, it's one of them.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
just your luck how you miss, you know. Um, but on top of that, it kind of ruined your team, didn't it? You know, because that's when teams started they wanted righty, they wanted brighty, they wanted.
yeah. We had the next season. I mean, we finished third in the old First Division, behind, I think it was Arsenal and Liverpool. So, you know, we finished third that year, and we won the ZDS Cup at Wembley and beat Everton in the final. And I think that was when a lot of buttons were pressed on some of our sort of better players. You know, Ian went to Arsenal, you know, at the end of that season. Jeff Thomas sort of followed very soon after, you know, and when you start losing your better players, it very quickly, you know, it takes your strength away. We went from finishing third, I think we finished something like 12th the next season, and then we lost sort of Brighty, and you know, some of the other lads started to go. And the following season, you know, we got relegated. I think we finished fourth bottom, but it was when they were adjusting the league, so the team that finished fourth bottom went down as well. So,
But it's kind of a replication of this season, of the season gone, isn't it? You know, they win the cup, sell a couple of the better players, but the replica ends there because they kind of did better.
Yeah, no, they
you know.
did. I mean, and you know, the manager deserves credit for that. Obviously, I think he's gone to Forest now, hasn't he? Which I guess is a little bit disappointing, because I think he was doing great things at Palace, and then, you know, to sort of say that, look, I'm moving, which is fair enough. I think we all thought he was going to get a bigger job abroad. So to come back to Forest, who, you know, in the past has been a really big club, but you wouldn't say it's currently one of the sort of biggest clubs in the Premiership. You know, I would have thought if he was going to come to another team in the Premiership, it would have been a top six or a big sort of name in the Premier League. So it's a bit of a strange one for him to do that, but he'll be, you know, difficult to replace. I'm sure the new manager will be trying his best, and the players have obviously got to give their all as well. So it'll be an interesting season to watch how well they do this year.
What was Steve Coppell like as a manager?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was great with me. He's very calm. Never got too animated in the change room. Very intelligent guy. Spoke really well to the players. Gave you simple instructions, simple jobs to do, and you know, you all know if you do your part of the job well, the team performs well. And you know, he was great. I mean, it was a good first manager for me in the old First Division. He was a good manager for me to have at that time, following on from another, you know, great one in Jerry Francis. So I was lucky with the two first managers I had, really.
And on to Leeds after Palace. Again, how did that come about, that move?
I think at Palace, I just signed a new contract in the March to stay at the club, and that's where I thought at the time I would end my career. So this is how weird football is, because we lost in the final of the playoffs when Steve Claridge shinned one to the top corner. And I just thought at that time, I thought, you know, that's probably almost going to be my last chance to play in the Premier League again. Gone because Palace hadn't gone up. And it was quite late on. It was into July when we sort of got a call from Everton, actually, funnily enough. So Everton had made a bid that Palace had accepted. So we were driving up the motorway to go and sign for Everton when Leeds, whilst we were driving, rang my agent and matched the bid. So when we got to Everton and informed them that Leeds had matched the bid, and you know, my agent said, look, you know, it's in Nigel's best interest to speak to both parties, instead of them not letting me sort of go and making me sign, you know, doing whatever it took to get me to sign for them. It was left to a director to basically give me directions through the Mersey Tunnel to get signs for the M62, but I need to get a move on because the traffic gets really bad. So we got shuffled from Everton across the M62 to Leeds, and when I got there, Howard Wilkinson and Bill Fotherby, who was the chairman at the time, there was no way they were going to let me go back over to talk to Everton again. They made sure that they did everything they could to get me to sign. And they were very persuasive, to me and my wife, and that's what we did. We ended up signing at Leeds.
They were half a decent team under Wilkinson as well, weren't they? They were.
Yeah, obviously they'd won the league, maybe 3 or 4 years earlier, and they got to the League Cup final the previous season, but you could just see signs that team was starting to creak. And I think Howard had realised that, and he, obviously I was one of his signings, but he was making signings to try and, strengthen the team at the time. He got Lee Bowyer in, he got Lee Sharp and Ian Rush as well. So the 4 of us kind of came. And obviously, Lee Sharp and Ian Rush got most of the headlines. Lee Bowyer and myself were slightly sort of less headlines in it, but probably the 2 that probably had the better Leeds careers actually were Lee and myself. So yes, but Howard actually got the sack probably 5 or 6 games after he bought me. So we'd started okay, but we lost at home to Man U 4-0, which is never a great result against your sort of biggest enemy, if you like. And he got the sack, and we got George Graham.
What year was that, Martin?
96. So start of the 96-97 season. So probably 5 or 6 games in, and then George Graham took over. And I mean, George was great for me. Because he obviously could identify we were probably easy to play against. So he sort of changed things and made us very defensive. So I think we ended up with 23 clean sheets in the league that year. And at the time, it was the record for the least goals scored by a team that had stayed up. It wasn't very entertaining, but it was effective, and it got me back into the England squad because I'd been out for 2 or 3 years. So, the weight of those clean sheets obviously got me back into the England squad.
George, of course, had a reputation as a hard taskmaster. How did that translate to you and your teammates at Leeds?
Yeah, he was. I tell you who he was hard on. He was hard on the goalkeeper, the 2 centre halves, the 2 midfielders, central midfielders, and the strikers, because he knew if your spine plays well, the team will get a good result. So, I mean, I can remember games coming in at half time, maybe having made 2 or 3 really good saves and feeling pretty good about myself. And all George would have to say is, you need to sort your kicking out. You didn't hit the striker a couple of times, and really go into quite a strong worded sort of tirade at me of how he wanted more from me with my kicking, rather than saying, well done for making those saves. But he knew if he keeps on top of his goalie and his 2 centre halves, we're not going to concede too many. And if he keeps on to his strikers, we'll score plenty of goals. So, those are the people he went at the most. But you knew if he sort of said something like, but he would never go overboard about your performance. But if it wasn't a negative, you'd had a good game.
How did you respond to George's treatment at the time? Did it really galvanise you into doing what he wanted you to do, or did you feel slightly aggrieved that he wasn't giving you the praise that maybe you thought you deserved?
No, it didn't bother me. I wasn't that. I'm not that precious that I needed people saying well done. I think I was always honest enough in my career to know if I'd had a good game or not. And if I'd not had a good game, I would apologise to my teammates the moment I got into the dressing room, and also to the manager if I'd made a mistake or I'd done something. And on the flip side, if I know I'd had a good game, I didn't need anyone necessarily having to tell me that. I knew, and I knew that they know, because they're football people, and football people understand when you're playing well and when you're not. So you can't pull the wool over managers of that experience. You can't pull the wool over their eyes. So you play with honesty. I think that's the best way of doing it. So I was always happy if I'd had a good game, and if I hadn't, I apologised and tried to work harder in training to put it right.
Well, your teammates do anyway, didn't they? It's simple as that. Some have strange ways of showing you. Some will wait till you get outside and have a beer or something and put their arm around you and say, that was great today, you know, or whatever, you know. But the dressing room was a strange place to work out, yeah?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, Gary Kelly and myself would probably have a row every other game on the pitch where he'd say, you know, I should have come for that ball, or I would have said, you know, why didn't you pass it back, or why didn't you clear it? But that's that strong, you're always demanding so much of each other on the pitch. But he would literally come off the pitch, put his arm around my shoulder, give me a kiss on the cheek and go, we're all good, big man, aren't we? And you know, it was that very much on the pitch. You just demand so much of each other, and you know it's not personal. You know it's just somebody trying to get more out of you. And off the pitch, obviously, you all get on really, really well. And that's the team spirit that you need in the team. They are funny places. People are all different. So, you know, I guess that's the manager's job, is to identify how to get the best out of each individual player. And that's how you manage your team. I think that's the best way of doing it.
Yeah. If you had a choice now to spend your whole career with one club under one manager that you played under, who would it be? What club and what manager?
That's really difficult.
Absolutely. That's why I ask about it.
Yeah, I know. That's a nasty question. Because I've played for 4 clubs and I loved playing for all of them. I'm one of those people that if I'm at that club, they will get everything that I've got given to them. So I'm quite loyal in that respect, that I will just give everything I can. So I actually loved all my clubs and loved being at all my clubs and giving all my time. It's so difficult.
Well,
I mean,
skip it. We'll go to the manager.
Well, no, I like that, because I had David Moyes at Everton, and Moyes was great for me as well. You know, at the back end of my career, I'd probably say one of the 2 Scotsmen that I had, you know, in George and, you know, David Moyes. Probably defensively, we got things a lot better, you know, and you rely on your strikers and wingers to get you the goals. You know, it's not free flowing football by any means, but it was effective against teams with more money to spend on better players. You know, we got some great results. So probably one of the 2 Scottish guys, I would have said.
Say that one. Don't accept that.
Look, when you were at Leeds, you had your first experience of playing in the Champions League, and you had some pretty special nights in that competition, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. I mean, it was the first taste, I think, for pretty much all of us of the Champions League. So, you know, to get drawn, you know, the first group is you've got AC Milan and Barcelona in it, and I think it's Besiktas from Turkey, and the top 2 teams go through. We play in the Nou Camp first game, which is an incredible stadium and a great opportunity, and we get trounced 4-0 with a very weakened side. We did have a lot of injuries that day, so we were not looking favourites to come out of that group, but obviously we beat AC Milan at home 1-0 on a rain-soaked night at Elland Road, where the atmosphere was absolutely incredible. Against some world-class players, and we got the clean sheet. We got Lee Bowyer managed to hit a long-range shot, which Dida, the Brazilian keeper, sort of patted down, and it went down between his legs and up into the goal. And we managed to beat AC Milan and then draw over there. And you know, those 4 points on top of beating Besiktas home and away, and drawing with Barcelona at home, got us through. So it was at the expense of Barcelona that time. You know, they finished 3rd and didn't progress. And then we go into the next group and we've got Anderlecht and Napoli and Real Madrid. And again, you're like, oh my God, you're playing some giants of European football here. And, to come out of that group as the, in second place behind Real Madrid was an incredible feat as well, first time in the Champions League. And then sort of going into the quarterfinals and beating Deportivo over two legs. The 3-0 win at home was as good as that Leeds team played. That was probably the peak of our sort of powers at that time. And we went over there to play them at their place, and they absolutely battered us. But we came away only losing 2-0, so we got through to the semi-final. And we just ran up against a very strong, defensively minded Valencia team that came to Elland Road and nullified everything that we could do. Got a 0-0 draw there, and then probably I think they scored with a handball in the over in their place. It was sort of 0-0 for quite a long time, and then they got a cross come in, and the guys put it in with his arm, and nobody's seen it. And I think the injustice of that sort of goal sort of got to us a little bit, and we lost our heads a little bit, and Alan Smith got sent off, and they ended up running away, winning 3-0 in the end. I'd like to have, if that first goal was disallowed as it should have been, I'd like to know now how that game would have ended, because I think we were certainly in it at that point.
You had some characters in that Leeds team, didn't you? Lee Bowyer, Alan Smith.
Yeah,
some larger-than-life individuals.
Absolutely. Rio was playing for us then. Lucas Radaby. We had a really good side.
I'll tell you something, Martin. You might. I'm not sure if it was around the time, but I got a phone call from Frank Lampard's father.
Yeah.
Old Frank. And he was telling me about Frank looked like signing for that team.
Okay.
He said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Are you crazy?" I said, at the time there was trouble outside nightclubs, and did they two of them on the field had a fight? And
No, that was Lee Bowyer when he'd gone to Newcastle with Kieran Dyer.
Oh, that was after. He was there.
The two lads who went out. Yeah, no, there was the trouble. I think a couple of the lads went out one of the nights, and obviously there was some trouble, and then obviously they were put on trial and stuff like that. So that does affect results. It's really weird, because as a player, you're kind of not affected by the situation because it's not happening to you, and you're getting on with your job as you normally would. But whenever there's any controversy around a team, results always suffer. And if you're not involved in that, you don't understand why. But look at the England cricket team recently with, what happened when, with Ben Stokes and everything. Results will suddenly change. So you need harmony on and off the pitch to get good results on the pitch, for sure.
Sorry, I just have to apologise to you on Alan's behalf, Nigel. He keeps calling you Martin for some reason.
I get that a lot. It's it's having, I guess, two Christian names, and one of them's a surname. So I do get that a lot.
There you go, Al.
Not about
Everton. Sorry, all the kids.
What makes it worse? Your name's in front of you. But the strangest thing about the thing with Leeds was when old Frank called me. I was the one that said to him, you got to talk Frank in some sense into it, because Chelsea were a little bit interested as well. And he said he won't go to Chelsea. He said they won't allow, because the West Ham supporters would follow him over there, and they'll keep calling him what they were calling him at West Ham. And I said, look, don't worry about it. Chelsea are going to be the team on the up. And that was around the time that it happened.
Yeah, yeah.
And he
Um,
went there, and it's another what might have been situation, you know.
Yeah, so I'm
But
going to blame you for Leeds not winning the league and cups and all sorts of things because
well,
I think
absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Frank
but it
would
was
have
a
been.
good, and Frank wasn't a very good fighter either. You know what I mean? He'd been no good outside the nightclubs.
Yeah, no, he'd have been a brilliant addition on the pitch though.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, had we have got a player of his caliber, then yeah, you don't know. You don't know. That might have been what we needed to really to push on. Obviously, you know, what an illustrious career he had at Chelsea, you know, and West Ham as well. Really, you know, he was a good young player.
yeah.
And then you know what he did at Chelsea was, and England as well was incredible. You know, watching him from a young lad, you know, coming in, but he even when he was young, he always spoke really well. So when he was interviewed, when you see him, you think, yeah, there's a kid that's got his head screwed on. He speaks really well. He's got a lot of knowledge for a young age, and you know, he was a hell of a player,
Oh,
wasn't
he was bright. He's a bright fellow. He said he's a bright fellow. But one of the reasons I was saying that, I was going to say that I would have liked to have been in your gloves, having to half hour with him after training and shooting practice, you know, because ooh.
he? Yeah, destroy your confidence. Yeah, absolutely.
Either that or the other way round.
Well, yeah, you know, goalkeepers in shoot. Sometimes you have good days. Sometimes you know the strikers win. Sometimes you win, and I think that when you're having those shooting drills, it's important for the goalie to win a few of those as well, and you know, just to remind remind the strikers that you know we're not so bad at the other end as well. So. Yeah, you know it was a test. You know, I played actually with Frank in probably I think it might have been his England debut. We played Spain at Aston Villa. So I started that game, and I think Frank came on, or he may have started the game. So, you know, I was around at that point, but obviously that was probably 2001, probably
Yeah.
first his cap, and obviously my last cap was in 2002. So, you know, once we were out of the World Cup, you know, I was probably 36 and probably deemed a little bit too old.
Looking back at you, I mean, we'll go on to Everton in a sec, perhaps the sort of last club in your career. But tell us a bit about your England time. I mean, you, like I said earlier, you were involved in 4 major tournaments. I mean,
Yeah,
which of those stands out for you?
um, I think 98 is the one that stands out the most. Um, 92 Sweden. I mean, that was my first real taste. I'd only been in probably half a dozen squads before the 92 team was picked, and to be picked ahead of David Seaman was good. And Chris Woods was the number one, so I didn't manage to play any of the games. Chris, you know, played the 3 games, and we sort of drew 2 and lost the last one, and you know, I didn't get a chance. France 98, I think if it had been France 97, Gaza was still playing and playing really well, and I think we would have had a chance to really go deep into the tournament, because we won, you know, the tournoi was the year before, which was Brazil, France, Italy and ourselves, and we won that tournament that year. But those 12 months just took a little bit out of Gaza, and you know, 1 or 2 others weren't quite, you know, at the same level they were at before. So you know, we got to the quarterfinal, I think, of that tournament, and to lose out to you know, the Argentinians in the way we did was a little bit disappointing. But I think had that tournament been that 1 year earlier, we might have gone close. Then Euro 2000, and I get called upon to come in literally 10 minutes before the kickoff when Dave's done his calf. Dave Seaman did his calf in the warm-up, and I just remember running in and being sweaty from doing my warm-up and trying to get kit off and get fresh kit on when it's sticking to you, and panicking because the UEFA guys are knocking on the door saying, you know, hurry up, we've got to be out, you know, and all this, and I'm sitting there with probably just like a pair of shorts on, not even got my shin pads on, and really rushing to go out. I remember singing the national anthem and the sweat was pouring down my face because I only just finished my warm up probably 10 minutes before. So not ideal preparation, and obviously we lost the game against Romania when Phil Neville gives away the penalty in the last few minutes, and they score the pen. We get knocked out of that, and that was a bit disappointing. But 2002 was another great tournament in Japan and Korea, and again, we come out second best to South American opposition with Brazil beating us with Ronaldinho's goal over Dave Seaman's head. People ask me all the time, would I have saved that? And it's one of those I always answer, I'd like to think I would, but if it happened to Dave, it could have happened to me. But imagine if it had happened to me, everyone would have said Dave Seaman would never have let that goal in. So it's the goalkeeper's lot, really, because David injured his shoulder, I think, probably 5 minutes before half time in that game. So myself and David James were warming up out there and getting ready to come on in case we were needed. But Dave came out for the second half, and then that goal goes in. So I don't know whether he was still, struggling with his shoulder or not. I don't know to this day if that was an issue. But certainly that was disappointing. But it's the thing that in these tournaments you lose that game and that's it. You're on the plane the next day and you're going home, and it's strange because 1 minute you're enjoying yourself in a tournament and the next it's done, it's over, and you're flying back, and you have all the disappointment of having to wait another 2 years for another chance.
But great memories, mate. Great memories.
Oh, they are. I mean, the France '98 World Cup, I actually flew home during the league part of the start of it. So the 4 teams in the group stages, and between a couple of the games, I flew back home to see our daughter born, and saw her born, and left her 5 hours later, and my wife to fly back into the squad. So that was a pretty surreal time. But they are great memories, and something that you'll treasure forever.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to nick one of Alan's questions now, because he asked us about club managers. I mean, you would have gone through Graham Taylor, Terry Venables, Glenn Hoddle, and Sven, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I didn't have Terry as an England manager. Only one. We had a B game in Sheffield, and I think that was the only one that I got picked in, because at the time Palace were going up and down, and he was picking Ian Walker from his old club at Tottenham at the time. So I couldn't get into the squad, so I didn't play Euro 96 because Palace had got relegated the previous year, I think. So he wasn't going to pick from the Championship. So I missed out. So mine were Graham Taylor, Glenn Hoddle, Kevin Keegan, Peter Taylor for one game. Howard Wilkinson and Peter Taylor for one game, and then Sven. Yeah, so all different, and all had really good managerial instincts. Like Kevin Keegan, is the type of guy you'd want to run through a brick wall for. Glenn was more tactical and trying to hit teams on the break, but play quickly and play with a high tempo, which we enjoyed. Ben was a little bit more cagey, spoke very quietly in meetings, which obviously makes you listen because you can't hear him very well. So that was a good tactic he had of doing things. And Graham was, he wore his heart on his sleeve and really threw everything out there. He wanted England to play with a Premier League type of team. But the thing was, I think at that level, teams were able to pick you off. You couldn't just get it forward quickly, and I think you need a little bit more possession, perhaps, of the ball than Graham was doing. So all different managers, but all had their strengths, and were all great men, really.
I mean, Thomas Tuchel took a bit of stick when he named his players for this World Cup, in terms of leaving players like Cole Palmer and Alexander Arnold and Phil Foden out. And he sort of addressed that by saying, well, it's important that he had the right 26 players together for team unity and team spirit. Of the 4 tournaments you went to, which was the one that had the best unity, the best team spirit?
I don't think any of them had bad team spirit. The one thing that probably stands out the most, which I know is something that Gareth Southgate tried to address, because I was in England squads, before and around the same time as him, was a lot of sort of inter-club rivalry. So the Man U boys and the Arsenal lads and the Liverpool lads would stay in groups, and there would be a little bit of them and us going on in the group, which the rest of us who, play for Leeds or Palace or Newcastle or Forest or whoever it is that make up the rest of the squad, found really strange, because, you're coming together as an England team. You want, and I believe everybody in the squad wants to do well. I just think if you have that inter-club rivalry and it's too strong, it does detract a little bit from what you can achieve. And I think there was still quite a lot of that involvement during that time. And I know it was something that Gareth was very keen on changing, really, just because you're Man U and you're Man City and you're Chelsea and you're Liverpool, you're fierce rivals when you're in the Premier League.
It's okay, Al. Nigel's in full flow.
Yeah, it was Don Revy on the phone.
Once you get back with England, he wanted that same team spirit and camaraderie and friendship amongst all his players from all teams, and I think that's definitely the way forward. And obviously Thomas has carried that on. He'll answer those questions by saying, well, we're scoring goals, our front guys are doing well, so that sort of takes away a little bit from the Palmer and Foden side of it. And Alexander Arnold, we could do with a right back probably at the moment. Yeah. We're struggling with injury and suspension now in that, but he's still got Nico O'Reilly will probably play left back if he hopefully doesn't get a suspension from cheeky little elbow, and Jed Spence will play on the right by the looks of it. So he's down to his bare bones in fullback department, but I'm sure he will have picked the squad with all sorts of permutations going on in his mind of how, if this player gets injured, who replaces. So he will have done, he looks a very cerebral manager that's going to cover every base that he possibly can with the players he's got there, and he seems to be doing that.
Do you think, when you say about you didn't use the word cliques, but I'm going to use it, the United and the Liverpool and the Chelsea cliques that you were in the middle of when you were with the England squad, to me it sounds surprising that the manager, do you think the manager at the time realised that was the case?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was probably the 90s, late 90s, when Glenn was in charge, was probably when it was at its height, because the Man United Arsenal rivalry was probably at its height in the Premier League. It was, you could toss a coin between them two probably for 4 or 5, 6 years who was going to win the league. So there was definitely a them and us thing, on the bus to training. There might be 4 Man United lads on one table and 2 more maybe on the table adjacent, and then there might be 5 or 6 Arsenal boys and they'd be all at the back together, and there'd be no mixing of that. Obviously when Glenn's picked his team, or he's asking us to do it, whatever he's asking us to do, everyone would do what you're told. But there was definitely that rivalry carried on into the England camp. Definitely, you could definitely see that, and like I said, that's something that Gareth really addressed when he took over as the manager. You could see that the England lads were happy around each other, and happy to it didn't matter which team you played for. You know, you just gave your all for the shirt. And I think, you know, I'm not saying that those players didn't give their all for the shirt, because they obviously did, but it did have that rivalry, which takes something away from the team, I think.
Alan, did you ever, in any of the teams you played in, did you ever come across teams that were sort of fragmented in terms of the way bunches of players separated themselves from others?
I think that happened in club football, that happened in, you know, card games, and they had their own idea of, and then obviously it changed, didn't it? You know, we used to go up on the trains, then they got the buses, then best when you started to fly. But the England group, I mean, I had the only 2 England games I played were at Wembley, so you wouldn't have seen it when you was away, and playing a few under 23 games. But then, yeah, there was a little. I think the one with the more caps would stick together. More so, the Keegans, the Shannons, and them people, they would sit together because they've got the most caps and probably know what the manager wants of them to behave, how they want to behave. Where the likes of me, I would come in and be one of them, you know, if I'll just do what I would want to do, kind of thing, you know. But there was a time, I remember the time at Manchester United, I think Chelsea as well, that they got so heavy into the gambling, you know, on the buses, and that they had to ban it. It was not like when we were playing and there was pound coins or two pounds and fivers on the table. They were playing big money, you know.
Yeah.
And that's got to be stopped. There should be no gambling between, you know, teammates or friends. Exactly, definitely not.
I agree with that. I mean, I've been at tournaments where card schools and things have been happening, and I've seen with my own eyes the size of some of the checks that players have paid to other players, and you're writing out a check for a good amount of money to pay off another player. It's going to stick in your throat, and it's not ideal. And it's at the end of the tournament, so you're already out the tournament. But if you're owing somebody a lot of money during the tournament, then that's never a good thing either. You know, it's a distraction, so probably best getting rid of all that as well.
Yeah.
I don't expect you to name names, Nigel, but what sort of checks are you talking about? What size of checks?
I can remember one check going into 5 figures, so
wow,
more than 10 grand.
Yeah, serious money.
Yeah,
and it's not, you know, I keep away from that. You know, I will have a bet on the Grand National or whatever, and when my 20 quid's gone, it's gone, sort of thing. But I think with gambling and especially in football, it's always about you know, it's like that one-upmanship. You've always got to be better than the next guy, sort of thing. And when you start gambling with money you can't afford to lose, that's when it has an effect on you as a person. So, you know, I think that's the only advice. If you're going to do it, you know, do it with money you can easily afford to lose.
Two more facets of your time I'd like to just explore briefly before we wrap up a great podcast. Just touch upon your time at Everton, which was your last league club.
Yeah, I loved it there. It was I'd actually, Terry Venables had taken over at Leeds during the summer of when I was away in the World Cup. So I came back. I only had 11 days off, and the club had organised a pre-season tour to Australia, China, and Thailand. And I'd literally just come back from there, and I was absolutely knackered. And I asked Terry if I could not go on the trip, because I just needed a bit more time to get myself right for the start of the next season. But he insisted that I had to go, and basically said if I didn't go on the trip, he'd never play me again for Leeds. And my answer to him was, the way I feel now, I don't care. I was that knackered and needed a break. So that was a bit disappointing. So then I had a whole season where I didn't play at all for Leeds, and I sat on the bench. And the start of the next season, I mean, Terry had been replaced by Peter Reid, and Peter had said to me, whoever does the best in pre-season out of you and Paul Robinson will start. I let him, I think, 1 goal as a penalty in pre-season in 2.5 games, and Paul in 2.5 games, I think, let in 5 goals. And I was thinking, I've got a really good chance of starting here. But my problem was I was sort of turning 37, and Paul was like, 22 or something. And, other clubs were sniffing around him, and Leeds' financial state was poor at the time. So Peter eventually sat me down and sort of said, look, I'm going to have to play him. He's worth £2 million. Tottenham are in for him, Villa are in for him. I've got to play him. But fortunately for me, I got a phone call from Chris Woods and sort of said, would I be interested in going to Everton? I went over, I spoke to David Moyes. He spoke to me about Richard Wright. He's got a knee problem, and he hadn't been great at the back end of last season. So he said, if you get your chance, he said, obviously I've got to keep playing him, but he is struggling with his knee. If you get your chance and you do well, you'll stay in the team. So I was like, right, okay. First game, Richard told me afterwards that he should never even started the game, but he was trying to keep me out the side. He played the first half or first 20 minutes, and then he came off. So I started then, and then I played some like the next 100 games for them. And Moyes was true to his word. He sort of said, you're doing so well, I'm going to keep you in the team. Even Richard, I think, had an op on his knee and then came back and was obviously keen to get back in the first team. But, I managed to sort of do 3 seasons there with them. Got a telephone call from Ray Clements asking me if I'd come back into the England setup. And at 37, 38, I just sort of said, am I going to be played at all? And, where am I going to be? And he said, no, you'd be number 3. And I was like, no, I'm just going to concentrate on playing for my club football, because I'm really enjoying it. And, that's what I did. And had those 3 great seasons with Everton. The first season was a real struggle. We stayed up. I think we finished 4th bottom. And the team that finished 3rd bottom was Leeds, and Leeds got relegated, and Everton stayed up. And it's a strange one, because at the time, a lot of my good friends were at Leeds, and I was thinking I'd love to have stayed at Leeds and done that for Leeds United instead of having to move and doing it for another club. But when you're told you're not needed anymore, it does give you that little bit of impetus to do well. And I went to Everton. I got Player of the Year that year, and we stayed up just above Leeds. And then the following year, we qualified for the Champions League, finishing 4th in the Premier League. From 4th bottom to sort of 4th top was a really good turnaround. And David Moyes, thankfully for me, he was great. He even said I was his greatest ever signing, which was a nice thing for him to say. And I played until I was just short of 40, and then got an ankle injury, which I didn't realise was stress fracture at the time. But I played about 3 months with this stress fracture in the ankle, which means that it wouldn't ever heal. So it was sort of described as non-union, so the bone hadn't healed together. So that's the end of your career. You can't carry on like that. So I've still got that ankle. It's still like that now. Obviously, it's got a screw in it, so it's stable. But that was my football days and my kicking of a football done, I think, at that point.
And now, at the age of 59, you've joined the ranks of dual England international.
Well, playing for the Lions. So I think the England Lions are. I think it was described as a progression team or development team, which I quite like the sounds of, because it means that you're young and you're developing.
They're going for the youth policy in you, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm not.
We should just make clear to those who don't know what I'm on about. We're talking cricket now.
Yeah, so playing cricket for England Lions. So it's not a full England cap. I'm not eligible for that until I turn 60, which is in August. But I'm eligible to play Lions games, so I've played 2 of those already. I've got another one coming up at the end of July. There is a World Cup in Canada this August. So I've not been picked in that. There's the guys are going out there, and hopefully they bring back the World Cup. But it's sport, it's team sport. I really enjoy playing team sport. I still I took up cricket probably again because I used to play as a kid and as a young man, and I probably took it up again in about 2011, so probably 5 years after I retired from football, and I've been playing every season since. I play for Cornwall Over-50s, so a home game for me and my wife is about an 800-mile round trip. But also to get this sort of recognition at England level has been tremendous as well. And it's what drives you, it's what keeps you going to the gym, it's what keeps you walking miles and miles and doing lots of strengthening work to stay fit enough to be able to do it, because these guys in their 60s are really, really fit and strong. And you would say the batting and bowling element of the game is strong. The skills are really, really strong. Obviously, fielding gets a little bit more difficult into your 60s, but I keep wicket, so I'm still playing on a Saturday in Yorkshire and still diving around like an idiot. So I really enjoy that, and it's being part of a dressing room. I think that's they're fun times, and winning and losing games of sport, it's different emotions, but there's still things that you share with other blokes. It's good fun, and it's keeping me fit and healthy, hopefully.
That's brilliant. And I know you've got a love for cricket as well, Al, haven't you? And a few cricket stories that you might be able to tell yourself.
No, my big one was I've already told Nigel. My Viv, once you play with Viv Richards, mate, there's nowhere to go.
No.
Well, explain to the people explain to the viewers watching this what you're referring to.
Well, I played with. He had a few days out with him as well. Viv Richards at that time was playing for Somerset, and he was near Bristol, where Chris Garland was playing at the time, and he went. They obviously met. I don't know. One of them met one of the girls. One of them met one of the sisters, and it brought Viv and Chris together. Now they were dating the 2 sisters, so they were basically living in the same house, So, okay. And he said, "I want you to meet my friend," and he didn't tell me who it was. Wow, we don't get no better,
No, what a legend.
I've been out 3 o'clock in the morning drinking with Pele, when I was a kid, but to actually be out there and then play a game of cricket with him, I kind of let him down one game because I told him, he asked me who wanted to open, and I said I would, and I was only joking really, and he went, "There, you go then," and I was back sooner than I went. But that was a great experience. I mean, just to be around people like that. And then when he went into bat, it was just somebody I knew down there in Somerset asked him to do something. He upset Viv, and I said, "Don't upset him. He's my guest, Don't upset him." I said, "You're out of order," and he took his way out today to come down here and do that. And it just so happened that half hour later, Viv was at the wicket and my mate bowled to him. And I think he knew where his car was. Smashed every window of his car, smashed the bonnet, the front window. He was that good,
Yeah.
I suppose he's a little bit like Sevy, just chinking it onto your windscreen or something,
It will.
But that's how Viv was. That was that good, That was, you can't get no. Apart from being as good as him,
Yeah, no, he had that swagger, that confidence, didn't he? The greats have it, and when he used to stroll out to, to bat. I remember watching him many times stroll out to bat against England. You were like, oh no, you know what's coming. Ian Botham talks of it a lot, doesn't he? And sort of saying, you've got to get Viv early. If you don't, he's going to hit you to all parts. And
it weren't as if you could say, I wish he had an early night, because he never did.
No, exactly. he was brilliant on the pitch and brilliant off it. So
absolutely. So we fit in well together.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stories. Great.
All right, Nigel. Well, listen, it's been a terrific podcast.
Great story. You've educated me a lot about the England team, and with me not being the great England follower, I remember you playing, and goalkeepers around that time. Well, there weren't much between you, was there? There was.
No, I mean, Dave was a great goalkeeper. If you're talking England greats, you talk of Banks, you talk of Shilton, Clements is in that mix, and Dave was certainly, they're probably the four great goalkeepers we've had. We've had some good goalkeepers and some solid goalkeepers in amongst them. So I think if you're around at the same time as one of them, it makes it more difficult for you. So, my job was to push him as much as I could to keep him, performing at the levels he had to perform at. And, I think that's what you try and do week in, week out for your club team. And, sometimes you're having a better time than he is, and you're thinking, right, I've got a chance now. And then, he'd put in another good performance for England. And it's like, he just couldn't just get that foot in the door and keep it open, really. So, yeah, it was a great guy to be behind, but certainly one that, I kept on his toes. But we had other greats, Tim Flowers was a good goalkeeper, David James. There was lots of really good goalkeepers around in England at the time. So, the competition was fierce.
Yeah. You've had a great career, mate. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. As did you.
And great having you on.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for appearing on the podcast, Nigel. And we wish you great success with the England Over-60s cricket team.
Thank you so much.
Let us know where you're playing. If you're anywhere near, we'll come and support you.
Well, there's a game in Essex. I can't think of the club off the top of my head, but it's something like the 29th of July in Essex somewhere, and I think it's against the UK Indians. So it should be a good game. So I know it's still a bit of a trek probably from where you are, but that's probably as close as we're going to get.
Who knows? Good luck to you, Dave. Nigel.
Cheers out.
Thanks a lot, Nigel. Appreciate you coming on.
No worries. Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye.